Hello, this is the Principal Liner Notes podcast. This is Sean Gaylord. I'm so glad that you are here tuning in, but I am even gladder that at last my wonderful guest, Dr. Sonia Matthew, is here. Sonia is someone that is a light in my PLN, my professional learning network, and I'm so glad after many months of getting our schedules and calendars aligned that Sonia is here with me. Sonia, if you are familiar with her, if you're not familiar with her, she is someone who is a mover and a shaker in the great state of Maryland, one of my former states. I lived in Silver Spring for a few years back, early in my career, and taught in Silver Spring, and I also taught in Forestville. So kind of in your neck of the woods, Sonia. But Sonia just recently was named the 2025 Maryland Assistant Principal of the Year. And not only did she receive state recognition, but national recognition. Sonia, I'm so glad that you're here on Principal Liner Notes.
Thank you, Sean. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad we're able to make it work with our busy schedules.
Absolutely. I've been out of school for a few weeks, and I know that you are in the process of wrapping up your school year, and I know that it is a busy time. So I'm grateful for our time together.
Yes, thank you. Me as well.
I know, often in this podcast we talk about leadership and the different frames in which to be a better leader, to grow as a leader. Sometimes I'll incorporate music, but in this case, I think if I think about all of the episodes that I have hosted over the years, 9 seasons now. The topic that we're going to focus in on, shame on me for not doing this years ago, but it is also a topic that is close to my professional heart, my principal heart, and that is the role of the assistant principal.
Important. So thank you for remembering and acknowledging that our role is definitely sometimes we don't really get that recognition because we really are those engines in the building. And we just have to kind of take some time to pause sometimes and remember that we are there to support the principal, to make sure that we carry out that vision. And just as much as sometimes teachers, we tend to forget, especially as school leaders, we tend to forget what it feels like to be in the classroom. I tell teachers all the time, Sean, their jobs are hard. And sometimes I even, I say it's harder than what we do. It's a different type of hard, but it's still difficult work. So I think anyone in education, anyone who works in a school is challenging. The assistant principal, sometimes we don't really, understand because we're not in that position. We really don't have, I know the principal position is very lonely. The assistant principal position can also be lonely. So thank you for acknowledging the great work that assistant principals do all over our country. Absolutely.
It is a pivotal role, and it is a role that in order for me to do what I do as principal, I could not do it without assistant principals. I know, Sonia, like this, as we're recording this, this is June the 14th, and it is that time of the year, depending on what part of the hemisphere or country that you're in. But primarily in our country, the school year is winding up. We are getting near the end of the fiscal year. This is this time of year where either assistant principal candidates are waiting to start their gig July 1st, or perhaps later, or there may be assistant principal candidates that are waiting for that school board meeting and waiting for that vote to go through, or maybe there are assistant principal candidates that are in the middle of the interview process as we speak. And you and I both know that all three of those scenarios are it's a mixture of excitement, it's a mixture of joy, it's a mixture of fear, it's a mixture of maybe some self-doubt. So you've been through that gauntlet before. I've been through that gauntlet before. So for those who are an assistant principal candidate, what kind of advice or wisdom would you want to impart to them at this stage in the game?
Yeah, so I always think about so every school is different, right? Every school culture is different. Every need in those buildings is different. So those principals, when we think about applying for the principalship or applying for the assistant principalship, we really have to know the schools that we're applying for. We have to understand, like, what does their data look like? What is the leadership style, if possible, even if you are kind of researching through the website, talking to different trusted folks who can give you not necessarily opinions, but perhaps just kind of their perceptions, or and just taking all that information in to see how would you be a good fit for that particular school district. And if you are, depending on your type of leadership style, if you perhaps are not the right fit for that particular school that you are applying to, what are you willing to negotiate? Okay, so what are you willing to maybe learn to become that best fit for that position? Because once you're in that position, it truly is difficult and it truly is a long day, so it's a lot of hours, and so it is stepping from potentially, if you're in the classroom, into the leadership role. And depending on where you are, depending on just what you've learned, you don't know what to expect. So my biggest advice is trust the process, know know the role, know what the school's needs are. Perhaps the principal is more of an adaptive principal and is looking for more of a technical type of assistant principal. So just kind of knowing that, and because it's always going to be about the best fit for that building, and know that don't take it personal if you do not get that offer. It's important to keep trying. And every experience you go through, every interview, every um, all of the applications that you fill out, all of that time that you are taking to pursue that position is not in vain, because it's going to make you more resilient. It's going to make you more humble. It is very difficult to get that no, but people who have been very successful, Sean, I have learned, have gone through, including me, have gone through many setbacks, many denials. And so you just have to really think, pause and think about that and know that what's for you is going to be yours in due time. So don't look at it as this is my time, it needs to happen now. Your time will come. But the last thing I'm going to say, whatever role you are in education, whether it be a teacher, whether it be a teacher leader in that building, your impact is amazing. It's not the position that defines your impact. It is really who you are and how you do your work, and knowing that you can be great no matter where you are. And sometimes I think, even as an assistant principal, my impact, sometimes I feel maybe even greater in that classroom. So really evaluating why you want to be an assistant principal, and then trusting that process and knowing that if that's what you really want to do, that place is for you. It is not the people who have denied you that are going to make room for you. It's your purpose that's going to make room for you.
Oh, I love that. It it is very, very important to be mindful
Mhm.
of our purpose, regardless of what role that we're in. And one of the things in my role as principal is my heart is always in the classroom, and it always will be. And there are days that I miss, being that high school English teacher. But I also know that in the assistant principals that I serve and support, that in some ways it's a leadership class that I get to teach, and in some cases learning from the assistant principal as well. But I feel that I have a responsibility as principal to coach, to mentor, to support, to challenge, and empower assistant principals. And to coach them up into whatever career path that they are looking for, be it principal, superintendent, whatever it may be down the line. For assistant principals who may not be in that kind of relationship, because there are some principals who don't do that and just delegate books, buses, and behinds to APs, and that's it. But for those assistant principals who or candidates that are tuning in right now that are struggling with that, what advice would you give to them?
So struggling with just being kind of regular, kind of just doing those functional things and not
Yes.
being able to really do
Yes.
those leadership attributes of the job. So, Principal Kafele always says that that's the most, the assistant principal is really the most underutilized role
Mhm.
in schools, right? And that is definitely true. I've been in three different schools as a school administrator. So this is my fourth year as an assistant principal, but I was a intern for a few years.
Mhm.
And so in those roles, you are definitely those things that you just indicated. You're doing the bus duty and the substitute coverage and definitely the discipline.
Mhm.
So without a doubt. Now, what I think for me is because I'm such a passionate leader and I believe in leadership, I believe in being really a student of leadership, understanding what is leadership and why does it even matter, because we can think about it as well. You're just managing things. You're just delegating like you said, Sean. But because I've had such amazing leaders in my own journey who've impacted me and who have really demonstrated to me that leadership is building up people to become leaders themselves. Because of those experiences, it's not really negotiable for me. Like, I'm going to do those things that I'm supposed to do, but I have to figure out how to really care about people because that matters to me. And there has been leaders who have poured into me. You're one of them, Sean, through even just our online relationship through Twitter, um, or now X, excuse me. But when you've had those experiences, you know how those experiences have impacted you. So now, when you take that time to realize that, it is really important and it's really part of our responsibility as leaders to now do the same for others. So we got to figure that out. We got to figure out as assistant principals, how do we do that? And so that is really the internal work that we have to really reflect on engaging in. And that internal work looks differently for different people, depending on really your faith, depending on what you value, depending on what brings you joy, what brings you peace, what type of home life you have. And I say home life because at the end of the day, you're going somewhere. And so have you created a space that's really a place where you can unwind and take that time to pause and reflect and then strategize. So that internal work does take time. It does take having the right people in your corner who you can trust to say, well, how can I figure this out to really know who I am as a leader? And that is really why Lauren Kaufman's book, The Leader Inside, really affected me, because you're hearing other people's stories, right? We talked earlier about our our failures that make us better, right? That going through that process of setbacks and not knowing what's next and growing and understanding. But then what is the outcome of that in our leadership? How are we now better as leaders because of our experiences? So that book allowed me to really learn from other leaders and their own stories to then empower me to go into this assistant principalship role and to figure out how to embed those leadership moves in those technical things I have to do every day. So it looks like I said, but I think I'll say this: consistency in what that is critical. So we've heard of atomic habits, right?
Yeah.
Over, if we just do a little bit every day and we quantify those little habits throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, we've really done a lot to really affect our leader inside and how we show up to those people we serve. And so, for an example, I would say for me, my mornings, and this is not something that just happened overnight. This was part of my journey, right? Even I'll say this, even coming to this podcast, I came to the realization that beyond those technical skills of an assistant principal, I have to get in front of these people and I have to initiate ideas. I have to convince. I have to inspire. So that means I need to get in front of them and I need to speak. Now, one thing you don't know that you may not know, in fact, and anyone listening to this does not know, I had a major speech impediment when I was a kid. I stuttered. I went through therapy. I was also someone who didn't speak English until I was in the second grade. So, of course, those experiences are going to affect my ability to speak. So, how can that be rectified? Instead of adding on courses in public speaking, how about just trying to learn how to not have the fear, because really there wasn't a lot that was wrong in my speaking, Sean. It was more my own doubts and fears. So that internal work to feel that confidence to go forth in front of people. So coming on your podcast is a perfect example. Just doing it and embedding it in what I'm already doing, as opposed to, oh, I've got to go no, now do this course. I've got to go now figure out how to do this. But just taking the plunge and taking those risks along the way in our work to really make those leadership moves. Another one is conflict resolution. So, what does that look like? Reading about it, listening to podcasts, listening to other people's experiences, and then actually taking the plunge and doing a conflict resolution meeting, maybe with some teachers who I've built that trust with. So, it looks different for everyone, but I will say that internal work or that self care and really knowing who you are and why you're in this work and why being a leader is important to you. And when I say being a leader, going beyond those technical aspects of our work.
Mm.
Yeah.
There were so many what I like to call rewindable moments in which you just shared, Sonia. I mean, truly a mini TED Talk masterclass on leadership, and I love the fact that you did mention our mutual friend Lauren Kaufman, who I like to affectionately refer to her as the unofficial executive producer of this podcast, and she's just a joy. And her book, The Leader Inside, which she has been on several times to talk about, is a must read. It is the kind of book where when you pick it up, be prepared to go through about two or three highlighters, be
Mhm.
prepared to go through the sticky notes, but most importantly, be prepared to have your heart filled with inspiration and seeing the value and the strengths that you possess. And Lauren just holds that up so beautifully in her book. I'm a big fan of it, and her book is always um two no more than a foot away from me. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And then also the the notion of internal work. And I know that it is something that you value. You've posted about, where hey, I'm off the grid for 45 minutes, or I'm taking a walk. I know that those things are very intentional for you, as they are for me. um what are some ways, because again, the assistant principal role is highly pressurized. You are trying to get ahead of things in service for the school, in service for kids, in service of the principal. You in many ways are the first line of defense, and it is hard with or it can be a challenge with the paperwork, the documentation, the phone calls, the documentation of the phone calls, all of those things that you're putting together. It is hard to take time out for you. So what are those things that you do, Sonia, that help you and help you kind of take care of that internal core for you, that internal work that you so eloquently just shared about?
Before I got to the point where I am now, where I think I have it figured out with my time, like when to do things, so when to exercise and when to kind of take that time to breathe. I did the whole add-on thing, like I just mentioned, right, with the whole public speaking. So the add-on. So I have to go home, and it's 6 o'clock at night. I have to go to the gym. I have to get ready to go to the gym, and now it's like 10 o'clock, and I have to do all. So did all that in my journey, right? Would stay up all night and would get this like kick in the morning after my big cup of coffee and just kind of wear it as a badge of honor to say, oh my goodness, I had 3 hours of sleep and here I go and I'm doing all this. But that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable and it's not healthy. So I learned that through my own self kind of reflection and like I had mentioned earlier, reading, learning from other people's stories, such as the stories that are in the chapters of Lauren's book. And through all of that, through all of those different things, you come to understand that now, with all that you've learned and your own reflection, I'm very reflective. I think that's probably why I wanted to become a national board certified teacher, because we love to think about our work, and I think that's important. Um, you now kind of come up with those different ways, and then if they don't work, like what is best for me, so I can, because leadership is so important to me and I want to be at my best for my students and those I serve. So to answer your question, I've realized the power of my mornings. And I know I've seen that with you, Sean. You are up early. You inspire me, right? You're up in the mornings early. You're at the gym. It's 5 a.m. So that, knowing that we can be up in the mornings, go to bed at night. Like, I'm not going to the gym at 6 o'clock now because I'm getting up in the morning. I'm getting my sleep, which is important and it's needed. I am not doing that work in the evenings. Instead, I'm doing it in the morning because scientifically, my brain is actually at its optimal place. So that 2 or 3 hours in the morning has worked tremendously well for me. And also in the age that I am, I've also realized that what I need as far as fitness wise is not what I thought it was. I don't necessarily need so much cardio, but I need to make sure that I am strengthening my muscles. And it's not necessarily the amount of weight, but it's really the repetition. So the stretching, the mobility, right? I heard today mobility is medicine. So, I didn't realize 2 years ago when I just fell and I didn't know why I fell. And I realized, well, this is part of the aging process. Like you have to strengthen your muscle. So the first time I fell, Sean, I actually did not get physical therapy. It was a sprain. And then I was at the United Conference in Nashville in July. Same thing happened again. I fell again. And I couldn't believe it because my shoes were comfortable, good shoes, and I was just walking on, just on carpet. And then I realized, okay, well, maybe I need to go do physical therapy. And when I did that, the therapist told me that you really need to strengthen your muscles. And this is why. And balance now becomes an issue when you get older. So you learn these things. And so I make that time in the morning because it's not as, I don't need to do the same things that I would have done in the past. And I just learn. So I guess to answer your question, just learning what's best for you. And what that looks like for me, Sean, are those early mornings. So I'm up around 4:30 a.m. I make sure I get enough sleep. And it's amazing how much work I can do that sub schedule in the morning and I can knock it out. I can get those emails. So you develop your little systems. And then when it's time to actually get ready for work, I've taken a lot of things off my to-do list, my growing to-do list. So
Wow.
that's what works for me.
Well, it's good to know that I'm not the only one up at before the crack of dawn, and I know that those early mornings of self-care are very, very important for me, and I know they're important for you. And I appreciate when you'll like something that I post or comment. So I appreciate that accountability and that self-care partnership because there is something because people will say, well, why do you do that? You get up, you're getting up before the crack of dawn. That's crazy. And my take is I need to pour peace into myself.
Yes.
And the best time of day is before sunrise. No one is up. No one is, there's no traffic. There are no lines at the gym.
Mhm.
And there's just something about that peace and that stillness of the day where and I love that, doing my mobile medicine. Uh,
Mhm.
and then that's also too where I think something about that peace and stillness gives me clarity. And when I have
Mhm.
clarity, that's when I
Yeah.
start getting ideas. That's when I start getting creative. I'll jot down a line for a future blog post. I'll jot down a thought that I have. It is so important, regardless of what role that you're in
Yes.
and that you take care of yourself,
Mhm.
whatever it may be. I'm not a jack guy, but I tell you, I sure do feel better after that elliptical. And I'm better not only for myself, but I'm better for those who I love. I'm better for those whom I serve.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Absolutely. That's so good. And it's so important. And again, I think if you take that time to think about it and do it, and just take those small steps, take those small steps. My exercise routine in the morning is only about 15 minutes. That's it. 15 minutes. I'm able to stretch every part of my body. I'm able to lift some weights. And so you really don't need what you think you might need or what you assume. And going back to what you were saying about, or what, also I was saying about the mornings, there's scientific evidence. There's scientific evidence about sleep and the importance of sleep. There's scientific evidence about, our brains and how they're just more, it's just more beneficial for you to get things done in the mornings.
Yes.
And so if you're not learning about these things and thinking that it matters, then it's going to show up like you said, in how you serve the people around you. It's possible there are days that I want to throw in the towel, of course, just like everyone else.
Same.
Every day is new and every day is a fresh opportunity and it's a gift, right? So when you can really realize that it's a gift and realize that there's so many things to be thankful for and take that morning time just to breathe and reflect and actually list out in your head or, write it out, whatever it is, to actually realize that it is a new day and there are great opportunities, and that you kind of want to expect that. You want to know and come to expect that your day is going to be full of what is good and really manifest that. And it works. And, it does, it works. And you just have to, again, like take that time to reflect and there's power, even when you said like to a simple thing like liking one of your posts, that can definitely, you find support in that. And I too find support when you do the same for me. Those are little moments in time, little seconds in time that give us, making those deposits into us that we can now go forth and do the same every day. Definitely.
Right on. I was going to ask you this after we concluded, but I'm going to ask you now.
Mhm.
Um, you are a a TED Talk and a book waiting to happen, or a blog post, blog series. So have you considered jotting down and writing and sharing, as you share in a blog form or book form or what have you? Again, and you can plead the fifth, but I gotta ask you. I gotta ask you. When is the Dr. Sonia Matthew blog coming out? We need it. It needs to happen. And I know, Lauren Kaufman would be also beating that same drum.
You've actually inspired me because we had a conversation through X about this, if you recall, Sean.
Right.
And so, again, I think those little steps along the way is how I'm getting there. So, if you'll notice, since that conversation, because I do think about it. So, my nonprofit I founded 2 years ago was called Imaginate, which is a word that I created that means imagining your greatness. Because
Mm.
the brain actually, it's scientific, does not really know the difference between what you are imagining and what is actually reality. So if we imagine that we're in this, different place and we're feeling it and sensing it, we're actually, the brain thinks it's there. So there's power in imagination and believing in what we are able to do. And so for me, again, yes, I want to do that. I want to write a book or, do a blog. And the timing of just having the time to do it is definitely a barrier. And I recognize that because I have the nonprofit and a family and everything else. But how can I take those micro steps to do that? And so I've done that by starting my Instagram page, my LinkedIn. And if you've noticed, I've really, make sure that my that my posts are a little bit longer now, and I've started to really talk about who I am and open up with more transparency into my identity and, some of the things that I've gone through. For example, even in this session today, telling you that I had a stuttering problem and, talking about just different things about who I am, because I've realized also that in the stories of our leaders who have been very much accomplished and successful, they truly do tell their stories in a candid way. So I've done that through my LinkedIn posts and always very consistently with your posts and Lauren's posts. I always try to add a little piece.
Mm.
And so that's how I've done it. And I'm just embracing the journey. And I think that if I was to write, I think about my title would be great where you are,
Mm.
and just kind of how do we, and the same things that we've been talking about on this pod today, just really how do you embrace kind of where you are in this journey? Because I think as leaders, a lot of times we do want to make the big impact, which is understandable. And you also want to have that leverage, right? Like I would definitely want to just not go through my principal and do this and that and kind of, and so I realized that, but I've been able to do that through my nonprofit where there's no like it's me. The buck stops with me and I can kind of do what I want. And so that's a great feeling. So I quench that thirst to be the one at the top, if you will. Um, so I guess I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did, and I love how your approach to it is, again, it's that intentionality that we talked about, in terms of micro steps, and your story is so compelling, and also, thank you for sharing that bit of vulnerability, with your past stutter and things of that nature. Um, I really try to frame the podcast as it it's an intimate conversation that we are inviting that other person in. I always think about like there's a third person who's listening, who is struggling, who is combating something, who is dealing with self-doubt or anxiety or depression or what have you. So I know that little nugget, that little micro step that you just shared is going to serve as the ignition for someone else's giant step to overcoming something that they're struggling with. So I'm very, very grateful and blessed by your sharing, Sonia. That I'm just very moved right now.
I love that. And again, people have done it. I have learned so much through people like you, and I have been inspired. And there was a time I have two daughters and a son. My son is 18 now, my daughter's 21, and my other daughter is 16. Now, when my daughters were younger, I bought a quote to hang on the wall, and the quote is, she was looking for or she did not have a hero, so she became one.
Mm.
And there was a reason for me to purchase that quote. I thought it was for my daughters, and I would always find it back in my room. So either like I would hang it out I remember I hung it in their bathroom, but it always came back like they didn't want it. It's like it came into my room. And so a couple of years ago in my reflection again, and I encourage everyone out there, if you're not that reflective person, just it doesn't take anything but just being still, quiet, and just being still, breathing, right? Allowing you to really think. And you mentioned that there's times, in the mornings where things come to you, right? Like ideas come to you. I have also found that in that quiet time, realizing for me, it's when I go for a jog or when I'm walking, I'm always taking out my phone, like, oh, this is an idea, and I'm noting it down. Even that title of Be Great Where You Are, that came to me during a time when I was running, because I was thinking about just different things that I kind of, my journey now and what I want to really help other people understand. But that quote is back in my room now, and I've realized in my reflection that was for me. I did have leaders in my life who have done a lot for me and poured into me. But what I was missing was really that identity piece of having someone who I could identify with, like really identify, right? Like someone who has immigrated from Canada to America, someone who has parents who have immigrated from India, who's first generation, someone who's out here, in education. And we know here in America, it's either, everything is kind of racially categorized with assessments and, everything is black, white, Hispanic. So that when you don't fit in any of those big categories. And so for me, that journey has been a difficult one to navigate as a South Asian, as a Canadian. And it's helped me to really, I've realized in my journey, like I need to become that person, that hero, that one to really emulate, because I did not have that person. I didn't have that person growing up. I was pretty much, it was mostly white. And from Ottawa, Canada, mostly white. So I was like, just a few brown skinned kids in the classroom. I was teased, with soya sauce. And I've gone through, and we all have our stories as children, but that also goes back to really why I'm in education, right? Because I've taken time to really reflect on those aspects of my childhood that were really hard for me. And so now, again, going back to becoming what I didn't have, in some of the things that I've dealt with in the classroom, just kind of being that really curious kid who was outside the box a lot. And also with my identity, having someone who looks like me to really look up to. So that's also helped me in uh, putting out my story in the different ways that I have. So I look forward to writing it out all together in a book one day. And thank you for your support. I know I can definitely rely on you and Lauren to cheer me on through the process.
Well, I know that you've got it from both of us unconditionally, and I
Thank you.
look forward to that day when I do see your words in print. We're going to manifest that
I
uh,
love it.
to
Thank you so much.
because the
Thank you.
universe needs your story, and it's so impactful, and I'm very grateful for you sharing it here on the podcast. How can folks follow you, Sonia? What are the best kind of? You mentioned LinkedIn, you mentioned your nonprofit. What are the best vehicles for folks in the PLN to connect with you and to follow your story?
Really, just there's definitely Twitter or X. I keep saying Twitter.
Okay.
Sonia Matthew too, and then Instagram is Youth Doctor, and LinkedIn is also Sonia Matthew, Dr. Sonia Matthew, NBCT, and I also recently started Threads, so I'm on that. I'm on Blue Sky, and I think it's Sonia Matthew on Blue Sky. I'm not too sure, but just Google.
Awesome. I'll be sure to put all of those items in the show notes, and so that folks who do tune in are able to connect and follow and learn with you on the journey. And your journey is so inspiring and so beautiful. And I'm grateful that we are connected, my friend.
Well, thank you for filling my cup. It's definitely inspiring me to continue to share because it wasn't easy letting people into that part, onto those aspects of who I am. So thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for the edification. And thank you so much for seeing me fit to come on to your amazing podcast, Sean.
Oh no, thank you. You are more than fit. And I may need to at some point. We'll have to run this through, and I know she'll say us through our the executive producer for the podcast, Lauren Kaufman. That maybe you can be a guest host, one day and take up and take a few episodes, and go with it. So. But anyway, Sonia, thank you so much. I know that your school year just ended with students and is about to end with the faculty, and I hope that your summer is filled with peace and time, that taking care of that internal clock that you talked about, and time with family. And I just look forward to continuing to follow you and to stay in touch with you along the journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. And I hope you have an amazing summer as well.
Got it, my friend. As we sign off here with the typical sign off, don't forget to share with the world your dreams, your ideas, your vision, because you help make the world a better place, and the world is better for it because of your dreams and visions and ideas, just like Sonia Matthew makes it so better for all of us. This is Sean Gaylord. This is the Principal Liner Notes podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope to catch you on the flip side.